In D.C., Democratic Congressman and House Minority Whip Steny Hoyer joins us right now. And Leader Hoyer, thank you very much for being here today.
Good morning. Thanks a lot. Good to be with you.
We've been going back and forth and taking a look at these two proposals. And the one thing I can say is that probably both of the proposals are dead on arrival when it tries to get the other House to go ahead and the other House of Congress to go along with it. Where do we stand right now, and what do you think it will really take to get some sort of an agreement between the two sides?
Well, obviously, there's going to take compromise, and we've had a very difficult time getting to that. I think that the Ryan budget, frankly, is a rehash of last year's budget and the budget before that. I think it, frankly, in many respects, it's an ideologically-driven pipe dream masquerading as policy. There are huge holes in it. Seeks to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Everybody knows that's not going to happen. Doesn't offer an alternative to it. It leaves about a $5 to $7 trillion hole in revenues to try to balance the budget, which Mr. Ryan says we're going to fix by some method of reducing preference items, tax expenditures, if you will, but doesn't say which ones or how. To that extent, it's much like the campaign that Romney-Ryan participated in, saying they were going to get to a place, but didn't say how they were going to get there.
Well, the Senate Finance Committee, Leader Hoyer, the Senate Finance Committee, their version of their budget also did not lay out which tax breaks they would be taking over and attacking. It is different in that it has both cuts to spending and higher revenue numbers that come in. And in that respect, it's balanced, but it doesn't balance the budget in 10 years.
Every bipartisan group that has met, whether it's Simpsons or Domenici-Rivlin, Gang of Six, you name your bipartisan group, that really grappled with how you get from where we are to where we need to be, and that is a fiscally sustainable path for this country, says that it has to be a balanced package of revenues and entitlement restraints and cuts in spending. I think that's accurate. As you know, I've said that all along. We need to follow that formula.
Leader, you have been behind that. You have been behind that plan from the very beginning.
And the Ryan budget does not follow that formula, Becky. And
I would agree with that, but I would also say that what we've done over the last 3 or 4 months probably made it a lot more difficult to get to a grand compromise by doing things in steps, including by raising rates on the wealthiest Americans that kind of put the Republicans in a position where they feel like they have given already. And it was not the approach. It was not the approach. I mean, if you're looking at what has actually been proposed by Simpson Bowles, they were talking about lowering rates and cutting a lot of the loopholes. So,
but Becky, you and I both know the Simpson Bowles came to raise about $2 trillion in revenues along with their balanced package.
It did.
$600 billion, which is what we did last time. And very frankly, I think probably we made a mistake when I say we Democrats not going over the cliff and negotiating from that point of view. I think we would probably had a better opportunity to get to a balanced program, which is where we need to be. We need to address all items of spending across the board. It's going to be difficult on both sides of the aisle. And you're right to the extent that if you take it incrementally, it is tougher. Yeah. A big deal gives everybody the opportunity to say, look, I like this, I don't like that, but this was a compromise, and that's what democracy is about.
Thank you. That's what I was really trying to get to. I mean, if there's a way to do a do-over and really reach towards a grand compromise, is there a way to do it now?
Well, certainly there is a way to do it, but it requires compromise on both sides. And as you know very well, Becky, from watching us, it's difficult to get compromise, particularly in the House of Representatives. Ironically, the Senate's been better at getting to compromise, whether it was on a farm bill, Violence Against Women Act, other pieces of legislation, than it has been for the House. You've got some very, very hard-line thinking in the House of Representatives. I would say, of course, from a partisan standpoint, I suppose, particularly on the Republican side, where in 2010 a lot of people were elected. They had a specific agenda, a specific objective, and they came to realize that objective without a realization. You got a lot of people who don't agree with them. You got to come to compromise.
Leader, and I hate to be pessimistic here, but given that it doesn't feel like a grand bargain is in the offing anytime soon, are there pieces of this? And I know we don't want to do it we don't want this to be a ground game. We'd like one great pass into the end zone. Are there little pieces where you think that there's agreement that could be reached? Even little tiny pieces. Even if we could just negotiate one by one. It's not the way you'd want to do it, but given where we are, it may be the only way to do it.
You know, I think Becky's right. I don't agree that it's the only way you can do it, little pieces. The problem with little pieces, each little piece you get the side that so-called thinks that they won on that little piece, then gets harder line and wants one little piece more and one little piece more. John Boehner and the president really did want to get to a grand bargain. I think John Boehner, frankly, couldn't sell it on his side. I think that's why it fell apart. Right. There are other views on that, I know, but I think that's why it went down. But the grand bargain, the genius of the grand bargain is everybody's going to have to take something they don't like in return for something they do like. And if you do it in little pieces, the little pieces are something that one side or the other doesn't like and therefore are reluctant to do.
The reason I'm raising the little pieces idea is I'm trying to find some common ground where at least the conversation can start. And so the reason I'm asking it is there one piece, is there anything that you've read in the Ryan plan at all, for example, that you would agree with? Is there anything in your plan that you think that they would agree with? Just to get the conversation at least moving. Maybe then you can move to a grand bargain ultimately.
Well, look, we've already reduced spending by about $1 trillion over the next 10 years in the Budget Control Act, as you know. We've reached agreement. I voted for that. Many Democrats voted for that. Many Republicans voted for that. We then adopted a super committee to try to get to a greater reduction in spending. My view would be in a balanced way. They couldn't get to a balanced solution, and the super committee failed, and then we had to sequester a very bad, irrational policy, but we ended up with it. We really need to get to move forward. But so, yes, we agreed that there needed to be reduction in spending, but the balance to that is we need to be increases in revenues. We did a little bit of that, not enough. And certainly when the Ryan plan says we need to do more, we agree with that, but there is no plan in the Ryan plan. There is no specificity. Becky points out there's not much specificity in the Senate plan. Clearly, it's easy for both sides to talk in generalities. Right. It's when you get to the specifics and they start.
Would you raise the age of Medicare eligibility?
Look, I don't want. I think you've heard me say over and over again. I think everything needs to be on the table, but I'm not going to adopt individual items because I think the way you get to being able to do everything on the table is to both sides, just as Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan set the stage. Tip O'Neill said, look, we need to make Social Security viable, and therefore we need some more revenues coming in to make sure it's viable. Ronald Reagan said, yes, but we need to cut the expenditures. We need to reduce benefits. So we raised the age. And in effect, each side got, and they came out together and said, look, we may not like each one of these elements, but we think together this gets us to a place where we need to be. America needs to get on a fiscally sustainable path. And we've got a formula that's been set forth by 3 or 4 or 5 different organizations, commissions, committees, senators, and frankly, House members who have said this is a path to get there. That's what we need to do.
Leader Hoyer, I agree with you. Thank you for taking the time. We really appreciate it.
You bet. Nice to see you.
You too.
Okay, coming up, breaking data on